Well, one of the keys to having great bloom out of your bulbs in the spring is to plant them at the proper depth in the fall. And I have a few of the bulbs laid out here with a little depth chart to show you just the exact place to plant them. Here I have my chart in inches, and basically the biggest bulb that you plant in the fall are the hyacinths, and they're also the deepest. You want to plant those at about 8 inches deep. That's because especially here in Oklahoma where we had this freeze-thaw cycle, they're deep enough where they won't be affected by that. Well, you move on up here, and that's where from 6 to 8 inches you would plant your narcissus and your tulips or your daffodils here. Now, a good rule of thumb for planting the daffodils is to plant them at twice the depth that they are tall. And here we've got about a 3-inch tall daffodil, so we're going to plant that at about 6 inches deep. Well, if you move on up here, the crocus, which is a smaller bulb, you only want to put that in the ground about 3 to 4 inches deep. And finally, with the muscari here, or the grape hyacinth, you want to put those in the ground at about 2 to 3 inches deep. Well, all of these bulbs, which are kind of the big 5 that everybody knows about, do really well in full sun. Also, the muscari and the hyacinths can actually take a little bit of shade and still give you a really good bloom. Well, there's a couple more bulbs that you may not think about planting. They're not really new, but we don't think about planting them, and that's the Gloria, the Snow, and also the Scilla. Now, these are both very small bulbs, as you can see, and so you want to put those in the ground about 3 inches deep. Now, the Gloria, the Snow, likes full sun, but the Scilla is a bulb that likes quite a bit of shade, so you could actually put that in a woody setting in with maybe some of your hardy ferns and things like that, and have a really nice surprise in the spring. Well, there's one thing about these smaller bulbs here. You'll hear people telling you that you need to plant a lot of them. Well, they're not just trying to sell you a lot of bulbs. Actually, for crocus and scilla and muscari to really make an impact, you need to plant them in groups of at least 25 so that you get a good show. So just remember to stock up on those smaller bulbs if you're wanting to make a show for this spring. Well, one of the other things that I want to show you is how you can combine bulbs with other plants. So let's move on down to the ground bed and we'll go ahead and plant some of those bulbs. Well, one of the downfalls of spring flowering bulbs is that once they've bloomed and done their thing, their foliage starts to look a little bit ratty. And you know you don't want to cut that off because that's actually feeding the bulb. And so here we've got a way to get around that a little bit. I'm planting some tulips, and again I'm planting them in about 6 inches deep and from 4 to 6 inches apart here. Now when you plant the tulips, go ahead and add just a little bit of bone meal or bulb booster to the hole. It'll tell you on the package just how much you need to add. Mix that around with the soil a little bit, and then drop the bulb in here. Now the reason that you use the bone meal or the bulb booster is that it's low in nitrogen, and a high nitrogen fertilizer will actually cause the bulbs to rot. Then I go ahead and fill the soil in around those bulbs, covering them up. Well, now the trick here to hide that foliage as it's starting to fade is to go ahead and use some kind of a low-growing plant and plant those over the top. I'm going to use some blue pansies here, and my bulbs that I've planted are pink, so that's a nice color combination. And you can just go ahead and space those out where they'll look nice. Now these pansies will go ahead and cover this bed up for us this fall, but they'll also make a nice combination when everything blooms in the spring. Well, the color combinations to these are absolutely endless, so pick one that you would like. Well, in addition to pansies, you could also use something like a juga, which I've got over here, and put that in, and use that with maybe some red tulips or something like that. You can also do some bulb combinations and plant maybe some blue muscari and some yellow daffodils in for that nice blue and yellow combination. Now as I'm planting these pansies, you'll notice that they're only about 4 inches deep, so I'm not disturbing those bulbs that I already planted down about 6 inches deep. So that's basically another one of your considerations, is plant something that's shallower than the depth that you planted your bulb. Well, while I'm planting this, both in the fall, you can actually go ahead, if you've got a ground cover already established, you could go ahead and just plant some bulbs spaced out in that ground cover that's already there, and that'll make a nice combination. So go ahead and experiment with these bulb and low plant combinations and see what you can come up with for a great spring surprise.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.